Hey folks, this is Riker, bringing you a Diablo 3 Reaper of Souls 2.12 guide to the best monk build. And at the end of this video, I'm going to give you one essential tip for monk players that is going to literally change the way you play this game. If you don't already know this tip, it will blow your mind. Now, the build I'm going to show you is a Lightning Sun Wukong monk. This is a modification of patch 2.11's Holy Sun Wukong build, and it's presently being used to top all the monk Greater Rift leaderboards. That said, the patch is still young, so check back in the coming weeks for updates on this build, as well as any potential new builds that will come to dethrone it. What's best is that this build will also become even more powerful in Season 2, thanks to one very special piece of gear. But first, let's look at the skills. This build will be a no generator build. We're going strictly with spenders, so we're going to be trying to keep our spirit up as much as possible. Now, this build has two main attacks. The first is Wave of Light, Pillar of the Ancients. This is the reason why we're going Lightning. Pillar of the Ancients is the rune that deals the most damage. And the reason we're picking Wave of Light is because of our gear choices, which we'll get to soon. Our next attack power, which costs a little less spirit, is Exploding Palm, Shocking Grasp. This applies a very long damage over time effect, and is useful to use when engaging Rift Guardians and packs. But Wave of Light really will be your bread and butter. All of our other skills are just meant to complement the build. Epiphany Desert Shroud is mandatory in just about every monk build. Not only does this reduce the damage you take by 50%, it also gives you a huge buff to spirit regen for 15 seconds. This is really useful to pop in those big engagements. Next, we have Sweeping Wind, Inner Storm. You might be wondering why we're picking the Holy Rune. Well, it's because we don't care about the damage of Sweeping Wind. Its damage is a drop in the pond compared to our Sun Wukong clones and our main attacks. We want to maintain 100% uptime on this skill for one reason alone. As long as your Vortex is at 3 or more stacks, you gain 8 spirit per second. And that life-changing tip that I told you about? It's an incredible quality of life trick that will enable you to easily keep up Sweeping Wind 100% of the time. Next, we have Mystic Ally, Air Ally. This gives us a nice passive buff to spirit regeneration, and whenever you're low on spirit and need that extra spirit, you just pop it and instantly gain 100 spirit. Then we have Dashing Strike, Blinding Speed. Why the Cold Rune? Again, we don't care about the damage. This is for that 40% increased dodge chance for 4 seconds after using Dashing Strike. Since Dexterity no longer offers dodge chance, being able to dodge roughly half of the incoming attacks is basically equivalent to doubling your toughness. Of course, there was that whole controversy over how useful dodge is, which is why Blizzard eventually changed the mechanic and made it more consistent. And if you're a hardcore player, obviously you don't want to rely on dodge, but in softcore, it can really be beneficial. Onto our passives, we're going to use Sixth Sense. That's going to give you some nice damage reduction against the main attacks that tend to kill you. In multiplayer games, Unity is tremendous. You'll basically always have that 20% damage buff. And even when playing solo, you'll be buffed by your AI allies. Next, Beacon of Etar. This gives you a nice chunk of cooldown reduction that translates into more uptime on Epiphany, more uptime on the dodge chance, and more casts of instant 100 spirit. Then last we have Harmony, which will give you a nice buff to your toughness. Onto the items. For this build, you will ideally be mixing 3 different sets together. The first and non-negotiable one is Sun Wukong's. Then the next 2 sets you ideally want are Innas and Augilds. If you can't get Innas and Augilds, some people do Augilds and Captain Crimson's, but the ideal you want to gun for is Sun Wukong, Inna, Augild. Of course, you're going to have the Ring of Royal Grandeur, so the set bonuses you're gunning for are the 4-piece bonus on Sun Wukong's, the 4-piece bonus on Innas, and the 3-piece bonus on Augilds. So for your shoulders, you're going with either Sun Wukong's or Augilds, and you'll want Dex, Vitality, All Resist, and Cooldown Reduction. For your helm, you'll ideally want Inna's or Sun Wukong's, but you can even go with a Leoric's Crown for the cooldown reduction, or a Tsokrin's Gaze for that buff to Wave of Light damage. These are, however, suboptimal choices to Inna's and Sun Wukong. You need a set item in that slot in order to get the 3 different set bonuses. Ideal helm stats, Dex, Vitality, Critical Hit Chance, and Socket with a diamond. For your neck, you'll ideally want Sun Wukong's, but if you can't get that, then the immunity amulets are good, especially the Zephyrian, because lightning is the bane of a melee character's existence. Ideal stats, lightning, crit chance, crit damage, and socket. Getting a high value on all those stats is more important than dexterity. For gloves, non-negotiable, you want Sun Wuko's paws. Ideal stats, dex, crit damage, crit chance, and cooldown reduction. For your chest, you'll want either Innas or Augilds. Ideal stats, dex, vitality, sockets, and all resist. If you can't get all resist because you have a single resist on your secondary, then take reduces damage from elites. For your wrists, you ideally want Augilds, or if you're playing Season 2, you're gonna want Gun-Go gear. In Season 2, and only starting in Season 2 and exclusive to Season 2 until that season ends, Gun-Go gear as a special effect will have Exploding Palms on death explosion apply Exploding Palm. I'm gonna stress that if you already found a Gun-Go gear, your old item will not gain this benefit. This will only apply to new pieces dropped in Season 2. Ideal stats, lightning, dex, vitality, and crit chance. For your rings, you'll need a Ring of Royal Grandeur with dex, attack speed, socket, and crit damage or crit chance. Then if you're playing solo, your other ring will be a Unity with crit damage, crit chance, elite damage, and socket. Or if you're playing in a group, you'll want a Stone of Jordan with lightning damage, elite damage, socket, and crit chance or crit damage. For your belt, if you're getting Captain Crimson's, this would be a good slot for it. Otherwise, you'll probably want Innas here. And if you can't get that, then a Thunder God's Vigor or a Witching Hour can serve in the meantime. For your pants, either Innas or Captain Crimson, dex, vitality, all resist, and sockets. For your boots, you need the crudest boots, and that's because Mystic Ally will instead summon 2 allies. And you're going to gain the double benefit of those allies. So the Air Ally will now increase your Spirit Regen by 8 instead of 4. Now, for your weapon, the optimal weapon for this build, sorry, it's no longer a Flying Dragon, and it's not even a Furnace, it is the Incense Torch of the Grand Temple. For 2 reasons. It buffs Wave of Light damage significantly, and it reduces the spirit cost of Wave of Light tremendously. Not only will you be able to cast twice as many Wave of Lights, but they're dealing a lot more damage. And of course, this all synergizes with the Sun Wuko set. Whenever you cast Exploding Palm or Wave of Light, you spawn Sun Wuko clones that deal 1000% weapon damage, and when they explode, they're going to temporarily buff your Exploding Palm and Wave of Light damage by 500%. For your legendary gems, you're going to definitely want Bane of the Trapped, which now properly works with the Monk. Once you get that to level 25, Bane of the Trapped basically makes you deal significantly more damage to everyone that you're in melee with. Next gem you'll want is Taeguk, which will buff your damage and toughness every time you spend Spirit, and you can keep stacking this a bunch of times. And ideally, you want to keep this up 100% of the time by spending Spirit every just under 3 seconds. Again, ideally, even if there are no enemies in sight, just spend Spirit to reset that 3-second timer. And the third gem you'll want is Bane of the Powerful. At level 25, that gives you 15% increased damage to elites, and pretty good uptime on a significant damage buff otherwise. An option instead of Bane of the Powerful could be the Gogok of Swiftness, and that's more if you want to spec towards cooldown reduction, but overall I think you get more bang for your buck out of Bane of the Powerful. As for your Paragon points, core is pretty straightforward across all builds. You want to put just enough into movement speed in order to get your total movement speed bonus up to 25%, factoring in whatever move speed you're getting from your boots or other gear, and dump all the rest into main stat. For offense, you want your total critical hit chance and critical hit damage to be at roughly a 1-to-10 ratio. And once you've maxed out those two, you can go into cooldown reduction. For defense, start by maxing out all resist, then dump into either life or armor, see which one gives you more toughness. And the utility tab is never that important, but resource cost reduction is probably what will help you most, followed by area damage. Alright, now for that trick that I promised you. I actually just recently learned this thanks to a viewer on my live stream. I believe his name was Dr. Hamfist. And again, it revolves around maintaining 100% uptime on Sweeping Wind. This way you'll always have it at 3 stacks, you'll never lose the stacks, and you'll always be gaining 8 spirit per second. First thing you want to do is go into your options and go to your keybinds. Scroll down until you find the action bar skill that corresponds to your Sweeping Wind. In my case, it's 2. Then bind that to a key on your numpad. I did numpad 7 because it's right close to numlock, which is the other key you'll have to press in order to make this work. So once you've got the keybind, hit accept, and all you're going to do is hold down your keybind In my case, it's number 7. And while holding that down, also press numlock. Then release both keys. My hand is now off the keyboard, and as you can see, he's constantly recasting Sweeping Wind. With the Ina's set bonus, the resource cost of Sweeping Wind is reduced by 70, and coupled that with other resource cost reduction and all the spirit per second that we get, and you'll see that my spirit isn't even taking a hit. Sweeping Wind is basically free. Here's the best part. I could walk around, and when I stop moving, he keeps casting it again. Now the only thing to bear in mind is if I hold down my left mouse button, look at the timer on Sweeping Wind, look at the timer, and it has expired because I didn't release in order to make him cast again. So rather than hold down your mouse, simply click it, and every time you'll stop moving, he's going to cast it. In fact, he casts Sweeping Wind as long as there is no other current input command. If you're holding down your mouse button, there's always a command. If you release, then even if he is walking over somewhere, like if you click on something, he's going to keep recasting it. That wraps up this guide. Thanks for watching. Check back in the future for updates to this build and new and emerging monk builds. Check out these other videos, and if you enjoyed this one, share it with friends, leave a comment, hit like, and subscribe to join Riker's Raiders.